ready. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this cool bracelet by making your own paper beads, and also how to tie this Celtic knot right here. So that's what I'm going to be showing you guys how to do today, and we're going to start by doing the paper beads. So let's get going.
Alright, so here's the paper that I've chosen to use to make my beads. The flowery patterns are really great for this because you get all kinds of colors and they're going to show up in each bead, and each bead is going to look unique. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip our paper over, and then along the bottom edge of the page we're going to start marking out our paper strips. We want our beads to be a ½ inch wide. So we're going to line our ruler up against the edge of our page, the edge that doesn't have the information strip on the other side, and you're going to find your ½ inch and make a little mark. So then we want our bead to taper to 1/8 of an inch, so that's going to be our next mark. So I'm going to continue making those marks along this whole side of this page, alternating from ½ inch to 1/8 of an inch all the way. So we're going to turn our page now 180 degrees so that our markings are now at the top, and we're going to mark the opposite side of the page in the same fashion. First thing we have to do is take our first ½ inch mark and repeat that on the bottom. And this is just going to be a reference so we can find the center of this strip. So from there, we know the center is at 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to find that 1/8 of an inch so that it's centered from the narrowest part of our bead to the widest part of our bead. So once we find that 1/8 of an inch and it's centered with the top part, we're going to start measuring, alternating between ½ inch and 1/8 of an inch all the way along this edge of the paper. So now we've got both opposite sides of our page marked out. We're going to take our ruler and we're going to line up our first bead strip. First we have to draw a line from the outside of the page down to our first center, and that tiny little piece is going to be discarded. So this strip is going to make our first bead strip. So ½ inch at the top and 1/8 of an inch at the bottom. And then, as you can see, we alternated 1/8 of an inch, ½ an inch all the way along so that we can get the most out of our paper. And so we're just going to line up these lines with our ruler all the way along, connecting those marks. Okay, so I've just finished connecting the lines and drawing the lines on my entire sheet of paper. You can see here, all the way across. And then from here, we're going to start cutting out our strips. And you want to make sure that when you're cutting, your hand is always parallel to where your knife is. So you want to keep the pressure parallel to where your knife is. You always want to make sure that your ruler is in between your knife and your hand that's holding your ruler. So you don't cut on the same side that you're holding your ruler. You can slip and cut yourself very easily, so make sure that your hand is holding the ruler and your knife is on the opposite side. So as you can see here, I adjusted my pressure as I went down. So my pressure was at the top where my knife was, and as I went down with my knife, I adjusted my hand and pushed it down to apply pressure so that it's parallel with my knife. Now you can see this is our first strip, so our first bead. So you can see the difference in width from our narrow end to our thicker end. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut each one of these strips out, and then we're going to move on to our next step. Okay, so now I've got all of my strips cut out. You're probably only going to need about between 14 and 18 beads to make your bracelet, but I would make a few extra just in case. So first thing you're going to need is to lay down something to protect your surface from getting any glue on it. And you're going to need some Mod Podge, some toothpicks, and a paintbrush. And then just a little dish to put your beads in as you finish them up. I'm going to zoom in so that you guys can see what I'm doing much better. So you're going to take your toothpick, you just need one for this, and you're going to take one of the strips of paper that you cut out and find the wide edge, and you're just going to curl the wide edge around the toothpick. So as you can see here, and I'm just going to roll it back and forth with my fingers a little bit to soften it. You remove your toothpick and then you have that little curled edge, and this is going to help us to form our beads once we start rolling them. You're going to apply just a little bit of Mod Podge to that curly edge on the inside. You need enough of the Mod Podge that it doesn't soak into your paper and dry too quickly, so just use about as much as you can see I'm using here. Once you've got just a little bit on there, you're going to recurl that edge in on itself so you can make a little hole. Just like that. And then what you want to make sure is that as you're rolling, you're keeping everything straight and centered as you're rolling. Otherwise your beads are going to end up being lopsided. So once you've rolled a little bit, you need to apply more glue. Just keep rolling and gluing as you go. And so just as you're finishing up your bead, just closing that final edge off, you just want to press it nicely, and then you're just going to take your brush that still has a bit of the Mod Podge on it, and you're going to do one final seal just over that edge. Just a little touch of Mod Podge. Then you take your toothpick, you find your hole, poke it in, and just twirl it in the opposite direction that your paper is going, so that you're just tightening everything up in there and opening up that hole. So you're going to do the same thing to the other side. And then you've got your first bead. You can see how all the colors stand out as the bead tapers. So that's pretty much how we're going to make our paper beads. So I'm just going to go ahead and make about 20 of those beads, and we're going to be back to move on to the next step. Alright, so I've got all of my beads done. So for our next step, we're going to need some of this Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. We're going to make our beads nice and glossy looking. It's also going to seal them so that they're protected against too much wear. We're also going to need a piece of modeling clay or putty, something like that. I'm using a kneaded eraser, just anything that we can stick things in upright and they'll stay. And then the next thing we're going to need is some toothpicks. What we're going to do with our toothpicks is we're going to use our snippy pliers and we're going to cut them in half so that we're left with two pieces. So we're just going to take a bead, we're going to stick it on there. We don't want to push it on there too hard, because once you put this dimensional magic on and it's dry enough, it might be hard to get that bead off of the toothpick. So just apply some of that dimensional magic directly to the bead. I know what I'm doing here is kind of fuzzy, but you can still tell what I'm doing. I'm just using my brush to move that glossy coating around so that it covers my entire bead evenly. So then you're going to take the toothpick you were using earlier and just remove any of that dimensional magic from the hole just by poking into the hole and twisting it a little bit. Once you've finished, you're just going to stick the toothpick in upright so that it stays, and then it will be able to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to all of the beads that I've got prepared, and then we're ready to move on to the next step. So now all of my beads are coated and I've got them all ready and they're going to dry nicely. These need to dry for 3 hours in total, but we can remove these toothpicks after approximately an hour once this stuff is dry to the touch. So while that's drying, we can move on to our next part, which is the strand of beads we're going to be using to tie our Celtic knot in. So I'm going to be using these turquoise colored beads and this illusion cord to string my beads. So what we're going to need is a piece of this cord cut to about 18 inches long. The strand of beads needs to be a little longer than what would normally fit around your wrist because we have to consider the fact that it's going to be knotted. So I'm going to get my strand beaded, and then I'll come back and show you how to do the knot. Okay, so I've got my mini beads strung, and as you can see, I've made it so that it's quite a bit longer than what you would normally have on your bracelet. So I'm going to show you how to do that Celtic knot. It's going to be difficult to explain, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing in the video. So you just loop your strand over itself on one side and grasp it where the two pieces come together. Then you're going to put the other end underneath that loop and you're going to end up with a pretzel shape. So then you want to grasp it where the pretzel crisscrosses, take the one end over the other and then put that end underneath that loop, loop it through. So you're going to pull that end through that part. Make sure you keep a firm grasp on that one spot. Then you're going to put your end over and then under and then back up through and then you're going to pull that end and then you're just going to tighten it up. And you just want to try to position the knot in the center of your bead string. Now you might need to pull on the pieces of the knot to get it to tighten up properly. But that's essentially it. If you need a little more direction, I'm going to have step-by-step photos on my blog post. So I will leave that link in the description of the video so you can easily find it if you need extra help. Okay, so now we're back with our paper beads. So now the next thing I'm going to need are some of these metal beads. I found these ones at Michael's. So the pattern that I'm going to be stringing is one large paper bead and then one metal bead and then paper bead and metal bead and so on. The only thing that's going to be different is that at each end of this string of beads I'm going to be doing one of the large metal beads and then I'm also going to put a smaller metal bead at each end. So I found these ones here also at Michael's. So I'm going to use one of these smaller beads at each end. So I'm just going to take my illusion cord and I'm going to go ahead and string 2 of these strands actually. So we're going to have 2 strands exactly the same. Alright, so as you can see, we're back and we've got all of our beads strung. So we've got 2 strands with the paper beads on them, and I've used 7 of the paper beads with a metal bead in between each, and then as I said, one of the larger metal beads and a smaller metal bead to finish off each end. So then what you're going to need is a toggle clasp and a couple of jump rings. Now you might need to add more than one jump ring to the end of this bracelet if you need a little bit more length for it to fit around your wrist. So we're just going to start with one of our strands that has the paper beads. We're going to attach one end to one of our jump rings, and the jump ring is closed at this point. So what we want to do is just loop the strand through, then make a loop, hold on to that loop, wrap your end around only 2 times, then take your end, put it through the loop at the top near the jump ring, and then pull it down and put it back through the new loop that was just formed. And from there, you're going to pull that knot nice and tight. So you want to make sure that this knot is very, very, very tight, otherwise it will come undone. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to tie a regular simple overhand knot just to secure that other knot and make sure it doesn't come undone, and we're going to pull that as tight as we possibly can. Then just tighten your beads up against that and then snip the end. Now we have to attach our other 2 strands to this same ring. And what we're going to do next is our strand with the knot and then our other paper bead strand. So we're going to go paper bead strand, knotted strand, and then paper bead strand. So I'm going to go ahead and tie my remaining 2 strands to this jump ring, and then I'll be right back to show you what to do next. So I've got all 3 of my strands attached to that one jump ring with the knotted strand in the center. Now I just need to open my jump ring and then attach this first side of my toggle clasp. Okay, so then from there we're going to arrange the beads in this way. So you're going to take your 2 strands of paper beads and you're going to wrap them around themselves, and then from there you're going to take your knotted strand and you're going to wrap it around those 2 strands. And then in the end you want to have it positioned so that your beaded strand ends up between the 2 paper bead strands again. And this is how we want to attach them to the next jump ring. The only thing different that we're going to do on this jump ring is that we're going to tie each strand of our beads on using a simple overhand knot first, so that your jump ring sits right up against your beads, and then we're going to continue by doing the same looping through itself knot that I showed you on the other end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all 3 of my strands, and then I will be right back. Okay, so I've got my bracelet all attached together. As you can see, I've added a couple of extra jump rings to each end, just so that the bracelet didn't sit so snug around my wrist. You may find the same thing, so you may want to add some extra jump rings as well. Now when you pick up your bracelet, you're going to notice that it does unravel, but the reason why we tied it in that way is so that when you twist it, it will easily stay twisted when it's on your wrist. Now there's just one extra thing that I think is a really cute touch if you're going to be making this bracelet as a gift. I'm going to be adding one of these little heart charms that say "Made with Love" just near the clasp. And then there you go. There's the completed bracelet. So you just twist it up, fold it over your arm, and then just clasp with your toggle clasp. And then voila, a really cute bracelet made with paper beads and a really nice French knot embellishment. And now here's a zoomed in view of the final product.
Alright everyone, that was the tutorial. I had a really great time making my own bracelet and making my paper beads, and I hope that you guys will really enjoy doing it as well. I want to thank you guys for spending this time with me as usual, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, you guys can come and follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and also come follow me on my awesome blog, thecreativeglow.blogspot.com, where I'm posting all kinds of other things besides just my video tutorials. So come follow me there. I'll be leaving all of that information along with the links in the description of this video below. Please feel free to leave me any comments or questions, or just say hey. I'd love to get your comments, so feel free to do that, and I hope you guys all have an awesome day. Bye!